my work decided to go crazy at 6 p.m. today, so I like just wrap things up and
breath.
Yeah. I count 5 commissioners so far. So when I see Gerard has joined in attendees. Oh, and there's Marco. So that's all 7 of us. We just need to get them in here.
Kelly. So Kelly. Good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, Madeline, for the reminder email.
Oh, we are all here, and it is time, so shall we? Thank you to everyone for attending the Planning Commission meeting today, March 15th. The Planning Commission will continue to hold meetings remotely via Zoom until such time that authorities determine that it's safe to meet in person. Please know that we want to hear from you if you are in the audience and you would like to address the Commission during public comment for an item on the agenda. Please use the raise your hand button at the bottom of the Zoom screen. When it is your turn to speak, planning staff will call your name. If you are joining us by telephone, you may also address the Commission during public comment by pressing *9, and staff will address you. I believe they will announce your phone number and unmute you. You will also be given 3 minutes to address the Commission. Please note, anyone in attendance may only speak once per agenda item. And I just want to note up front, and I will note this again when it comes up, we have items continued from our last meeting, and we would request that people who did speak to the item at the last meeting not just speak to repeat their comments. We would like to hear from folks who were unable to make it to the last meeting due to the confusion with the noticing. And if there are actually new issues to address, then that's fine. We can bring them up. But please be respectful of the time of staff and the Commission and the other people in attendance, and let's get new comments, not just repetition. That said, Madeline, could you have a roll call, please?
Chair Harmon?
Present.
Vice Chair Madden?
Here.
Commissioner Biasotti?
Here.
Commissioner DeRozzo?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Commissioner Lethen?
Here.
Commissioner Morgan?
Here.
All present. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madeline. Let's see. Roll call. We get our Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Lethen, would you care to lead us?
Sure, happy to. Okay. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, approval of minutes. I know I already had made a small correction, which has been issued in our updated packet. Does anyone else have any comments or corrections to our minutes? Does not look like it.
I'm happy to motion through the chair.
Great.
Okay, I motion that we approve the minutes for February 15, 2022.
I second it.
Madeline, if we could have the roll call.
Chair Harmon?
Aye.
Vice Chair Madden?
Aye.
Commissioner Biasotti?
Aye.
Commissioner DeRozzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Lethen?
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan?
Aye.
Sounds like that passes. All right. At this time, we would have time for public comment for items not on the agenda. If you are in attendance this evening to address the Commission on an item that is not agendized and wish to speak, please raise your hand. I see one hand.
Joanne, I'm going to open the room and allow you to talk. Hi, Joanne, can you hear
My
us?
mistake. That's my mistake. I raised my hand when you talked about raising your hand. So I did, but I don't want to talk on this. Thank you.
No problem. Thank
Okay.
you. All right, so with no items not on the agenda, do we have any announcements of conflict of interest for this evening?
Yes, I do have a conflict with item 7B, 642 Pepper Drive.
All right,
Because
so
of the closeness.
we will have you removed from that when we get to there. Is that the only one? Nobody else? Looks like. All right, then moving on. So item 7A, one of our continued items, 1261 Claremont Drive. I believe Michael is delivering our short presentation.
You're on mute, Michael.
All right. Hopefully everyone can see the screen.
Yep.
Okay, good. Yes, so this is a continued public hearing item for 1261 Claremont Drive. I'll just briefly just mention the proposed project. It is a second-story addition with a total increase of 1,273 square feet. The total size of the home plus the addition, and this is gross square footage, so it includes the garage, which would be 3,130 square feet, which is a floor area of 0.53 and lot coverage percentage of 35%. 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms with a remodeled and expanded kitchen, a new family room, and 2 new upstairs bedrooms and bathrooms. This item went to the Architecture Review Committee on 2 occasions. After the Architecture Review Committee meeting in January, the applicant lowered the height of the overall height of the second-story addition to 25 feet 7 inches, with 9 feet 4 inches for the living room plate height, and then the bedroom sidewall is 7 foot 9 inches with 18-inch crawl space. This is the revised side elevation that was submitted after the Planning Commission meeting on the 15th. And all of the second-story windows are clear-story windows for the closet, bathrooms, and then the one bedroom that's in the front. So they're all above eye level. The revised plans also include a notation for a privacy screen at the deck in the back. Also submitted after the meeting on the 15th of last month was a landscape detail showing the planting of trees to include birch, Japanese maple, cherry, and an apple tree along the the rear yard of the property. Also included in the revised drawings were some expanded shade shadow diagrams. So the first diagram that was submitted shows the approximate sun angles for summer and fall, and then also winter. So of course the longest shadows that are cast to the north and the neighboring property at 1251 Claremont would be cast during the winter months. So what the diagram shows is that between the existing first one story and the roof peak for the one-story residence, there's an existing shadow that's cast approximately 24 feet 9 inches, and during the winter at the peak in December, and that would extend to 44 feet. So it would be an increase of approximately 20 feet of shade shadow to the neighboring property. These diagrams show in the light gray shading area the shadowing at the 3 different times of year. Again, with the winter shadow shown in the light gray here, and its relationship to the adjoining property. Of course, during the summer, in June, when the sun is at its highest point in the sky, there is just a minimal shadow at that point. And then in the fall, there's the also shadowing to the neighbor. So this is just a closer view of the shadow that's cast in the winter. Again, the neighboring home does have its primary outdoor living area oriented to the side yard. I did want to include in the presentation this evening 2 of the illustrations that were submitted by the neighboring property owner. The first is the aerial photo, which shows the relationship of the house with proposed second story in addition in relation to their home, plus the home that's on Fairmont. And then on the next slide here, the architectural plans show a 14-foot distance to the Claremont residence, and as shown here, the distance is actually 10 feet 2 inches at its closest. And then with the indoor living area and then the covered patio area, the roof line of the adjoining house is shown here, and with its relationship to the proposed property. Again, shadows would be cast in the winter months across the property. So the Planning Commission, for its consideration this evening, will need to make a total of 6 findings for the project, and there is language included in your staff report which describes the first 3 findings, which are use permit findings for the proposed addition, and so they're listed here. I won't read them, but we'll just keep in mind that there are the 3 findings for the use permit. And then also there are the 3 findings for the architectural review permit. These are the first 2 findings. And then finally, I'd like to just talk about the 3rd and last finding, which I actually reversed the order that's in your staff report. That the proposed development as set forth on the plans will not unreasonably restrict or interfere with light and air on the property and on other property in the neighborhood, and will not hinder or discourage the appropriate development and use of land and buildings in the neighborhood or impair the value thereof, and is consistent with the design and scale of the neighborhood. So there is one residential design guideline, 3.13, which states that a second-story addition should minimize shadow impacts on adjacent properties, and that second floor volumes should be designed to minimize blocking sun access to living spaces and actively used outdoor areas on adjacent homes. And then continuing on, I just wanted to note that the city does not have a requirement for applicants to submit a shadow study, but in this case that information was submitted. The city also does not have a set standard for a shading impact. So the application of the residential design guideline would be basically on a case-by-case basis. And then finally, as presented, the proposed second-story addition will increase the length of shadows on the adjoining property by about 20 feet on the neighboring property during the winter solstice. So the recommendation is to consider and make the findings for the conditional use permit, and also to consider and make the findings for the architectural review. So what staff is recommending to the Planning Commission this evening is that you consider the information presented by the applicant and neighboring property owners and the plans that have been submitted at the meeting tonight, and determine if the finding regarding light and air can be made in the positive for the project. If the Planning Commission finds that the proposed addition does not impact light and air, then the Planning Commission, if the Planning Commission finds the proposed addition does impact light and air, then the Planning Commission can take the alternative action that's listed in the staff report and deny the project. And also, if that's the case, the Planning Commission will want to also provide direction to the applicant as well. And that concludes my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have at this point.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes, thank you. I have a question, and I'll kind of start with just saying that I was able to visit the jobs or the property adjacent to the proposed site at 1251 Claremont, and was able to meet with the Murphys, and was able to view the lots as they relate to each other. And also, I brought with me a measuring tape, and I'm thankful that staff has pointed out the significant, the 4-foot error in the distance between the homes. The architect's plans indicated there was more space between the proposed site and the home of the neighbors. And when I was out there with my little plans that staff kindly printed for me, and the neighbor, Mr. Murphy, did point out the discrepancy. I pulled out my own measuring tape and I measured it, which led me to a question, which is, should I ever go and view a job site, am I able to take into consideration information that I gather myself that contradicts what's given to me in staff reports? And my other question that pertains to that is, whose responsibility is it to make sure that the plans that we receive and are evaluating are accurate? Because this is a really important measurement in regards to the decision that we're going to be making. And I don't think that should fall on the neighbor to point out that, there's an error in the plans of their neighbor that will impact their property. And I don't believe that it's a commissioner's obligation to go out with a measuring tape and measure that also. So I'm just curious whether or not I can use that information in my decision making, and who's ultimately responsible for these measurements.
If I may, Mr. Chair, I can answer Commissioner Letton's first question.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Very good. Yes, so the short answer is yes, Commissioner. You're able to use your personal observations that you made while you were at the property. You disclosed that you did go to the property, that you took those measurements and how you took them. Certainly somebody else might dispute those measurements or say something about it, but that's the purpose of the public hearing tonight. So as for the second question, I'll toss that one to staff, and they can address that. But you're able to use your personal observations.
Could I just ask as a refinement on Commissioner Leffen's question? It looks to me like the point was that the 14-foot measurement was to essentially a different wall than the 10-foot measurement. The 10-foot measurement was to the edge of that patio covering, or was it just completely wrong?
My understanding is that the architect marked the 10-foot, I think it was 10'4". I don't have it in front of me or beside me, sorry. He had it marked from the fence line, the property line, to the Murphys, the side of the Murphys home, and that measurement, I'm sorry.
It included the offset from the other side of the fence.
I'm sorry. If you excuse me for a second, I'm going to go pull the drawings really quickly. I'll be right back. Our staff is welcome to clarify because they had it on the presentation.
Yeah. So I can go back to the screen share here. Yeah, and so yeah, so this was again submitted by the neighbor. You can see underneath the outline that was included in the architect's plans. And I can also briefly just speak to the plans. I mean, ultimately the architect should this should be accurate from the architect. We don't require that they include neighboring property footprints on the plans, but in most cases we have them. Staff does look at the plans, for the relationships and in basically rough terms. Unfortunately, in this case, we did not catch the 14-foot or about the 4-foot discrepancy in this case from our observations. So that's why, again, staff wanted to clarify it for you this evening.
So where you have the 10-foot 2 line turns and makes the right angle, that actually is the exterior wall of the house. That's not the covered patio that you were mentioning.
I believe the patio is here, and then the actual enclosed part is here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
When you go to this slide, you can see.
Sure. Okay.
You can see the roof here.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Through the chair, I also visited the house and brought measuring tape and confirmed those measurements. And as far as I can see, I don't believe that the plan as proposed meets the first finding for the use permit or the architectural review permit. That is, it says, under the circumstance of a particular case, be detrimental to the health, safety, morals, comfort, and general welfare of the persons residing or working in the neighbourhood of such proposed use. And then on the architectural review, as set forth in the plan, will not unreasonably restrict or interfere with light or air on the property or on the other property in the neighbourhood, not hinder or discourage the appropriate development and use of the land and buildings, blah, blah. But, I think the setback is fathered in at just over 4 feet. And it should be 5 feet, but, I don't think building straight up from that is making the matter far worse. And I think it's definitely unreasonably overshadowing the house next door.
Through the chair, Commissioner
Biasotti.
In looking at these drawings, one of the comments that was made by the neighbors was the new fireplace along that wall. How far into that 10 feet does that new fireplace project? And how close are we encroaching into that setback?
So the setback on the subject property is 4 feet 1 inch. So
is that measured from the building or from the outside?
That's from the property line to the home that's proposing the addition.
Correct. Did the outside wall or the fireplace? The fireplace.
Yeah, Yeah, so, yeah, there is a, I'll go back to my screen share here. So yes, there is, the fireplace is right in this area here, so it encroaches by approximately 2 feet into the side yard.
So should we measure from that mark or from the wall of the house?
That would be down to like 8'2" then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would be 2 feet less.
And the other question, we're talking about that 4-foot side setback, or 4'10", whatever it was. You know, when people put up fences and stuff, they don't always end up on the property line. So, not to push the conversation one way or another, but there's potential that may be technically a 5-foot property line. But they'd have to do a survey for that, so.
Commissioner Madden?
Yeah, so like the others, I did also go out to the site this weekend and met with the Murphy family. And this dimension was pointed out to me as being inaccurate. And I agree that it is very inaccurate. There's a 4-foot bust in the dimension. And the fireplace popping out at least 2 feet is going to reduce that even further. What was, really striking to me was the deck in the rear. It's really close to their fence, what they're proposing to build. It's quite large. In reviewing some information, I guess some other architects submitted some analysis, and maybe some of the letters from the Murphys indicated that the architect or the owner is saying that that deck is a requirement, which struck me as odd. It's not an exit. If it has regular windows, the means of egress is that the window is good enough. So the deck is it's very close. It's basically looming over the other property. So I found it very strange. The Murphy's concern seems to be the morning hours of the day and the shadow casting. I note that the revised shadow study is showing the shadows at noon, when the shadows are the smallest at different times of the year. Generally, in my experience, they usually show morning, noon, and afternoon typically. So, I'm seeing kind of a pattern here, whether it be intentional or not, that some things are not accurate or not helpful, and because of that, they come across as misleading to me. So I think for me, I'm a no on this. I think there are things that could happen to change my mind, like increasing the setback all the way along, or the articulation all the way along the property line to comply with the daylight plane. I believe the spirit of the residential design guidelines are clear that this is for side lots or side-by-side properties, and I think because this is a corner lot that's being taken advantage of, I would like the deck moved back or eliminated totally. I think the roof should be a hip roof at the back rear to help minimize the shadowing, and I think all the dimensions should be accurate. Just like I stated last time, I did not appreciate that the dimensions were just typed in, but the physical drawings were not to scale. So I think I agree with a lot of the analysis of the architects too, that reviewed this. They pointed out that in the garage it doesn't even work. There's a stairwell blocking one of the parking spaces. Very odd. And they did come up with a proposed alternate that does meet the spirit and the letter of the residential design guidelines. It will definitely be more difficult to build, but I think why have these guidelines if they can just be kind of tossed away whenever? So that's my 2 cents. I think I don't have any issues with the look of the house. There's a lot of talk about it doesn't fit the neighborhood. I completely disagree with that. There's a whole mishmash, hodgepodge of houses in that area, just like all of San Bruno. I don't think that's a valid argument from my point of view, but I think the other issues with this house are enough for me to not want to approve it at this time.
Mr. Chair, if I may interject at this moment, I'm really sorry to cut off the discussion. I think it would be important to pause for just a moment because it seems that commissioners are issuing their opinions on the project rather than asking questions of staff, which is what I think the chair had asked for. It would be important to get public comment on the record before commissioners make further substantive comments regarding the project. So I would say that if commissioners right now have any questions about the staff report, now is the time to ask them. If they have comments, I would recommend that you reserve those comments until after the public has had an opportunity to speak and the public hearing is closed, so that we have a full record on which commissioners can base their comments.
Sorry about that. My question to the staff is, have they gone to the site?
Yes, staff, yes. Yes, I have not been in Mr. Murphy's yard.
Commissioner Durazo.
Hi, good evening, folks. Question first. Thank you, Mark, for interjecting there. I'm going to refrain from commenting and just ask a question. I also visited the site for the weekend and met with the Murphy family. I just want to be crystal clear on one thing. The discrepancy between the measurement between the 2 homes, I'm a bit confused. So we're acknowledging that there's a discrepancy, and then we just looked at, and the board packet had shadow studies that were shared by the architect. Are those still valid given that discrepancy, or am I missing something there, or does that change in any way in a substantive form, the shadow studies that were shared with us?
I think through the chair I can respond to that. So I think what the result is that during, particularly in winter when the shadows are the longest, at noontime, at least from the information we received from the architect, the shadows are cast an additional 20 feet. So what that does, based on the revision, is since the home's closer than was shown on the architect's plans, and there's a larger wall segment that's also on that side, that the shadowing would be greater, I think would be the takeaway there, that the shadows would actually extend deeper into the lot and the open yard area at pretty much at all times of the year, but in particular in the winter when the shadows are the longest.
Thank you. Just to clarify that, the version on the shadow study still contains that discrepancy, or was the original diagram? I thought the shadow study we had already updated.
Yeah, I will. If I can go back to share screen, I'll try to describe it. Again, on this was the slide which shows the location of the house, and you can see underneath it the line that the architect drew for the location of the house. And then I'll go back to the shadow study submitted by the architect. So
it does appear to contain the same error.
Yeah. So right, exactly. So since more of the house would be in this full shadow area during the winter, and then as you go back, as well, probably, more than one time a year, as in the spring and in the fall as well, there would be more shadowing just by virtue of the relationship between the two structures.
All right, I see Commissioner Leffin's hand again.
Yes. A question for staff as it relates to the proposed deck and the property at 1181 Fairmont. I noticed that there also was a discrepancy that the Murphys pointed out, and that I see has also been corrected in the new staff presentation tonight, that the building at 1181 is significantly longer, and it carries down basically to the junction of those fences. And that deck looks directly down and kind of, it looms over the building there. Yes, thank you. Yeah, that's a really good description of it. The deck actually comes really fairly close to the home at 1181 Fairmont. And I'm just wondering from staff if there's any considerations that we should be making from a code or from the perspective of the design guidelines with regards to privacy or anything else related to that information.
Well, first, I'd like to clarify that the deck is certainly not required. It's something that the applicant desires to have. And then second, the deck does maximize its footprint in terms of what's allowed. The rear setback's 10 feet, and decks can encroach 4 feet, so they're taking advantage of a full encroachment. So certainly the placement and size of the deck can be considered by the commission, and whether it's there at all, both for privacy concerns and for light and air.
Great, thank you.
I see a hand from Commissioner Biasotti.
Thank you. Just as a matter of transparency, I visited the site myself. I did not meet with the neighbors, but I did inspect the properties. Just put all the information out on the table. So that's it.
I believe we have, is the architect in attendance for this? I had a question for him.
Yes, Chair, I will bring him into the room.
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes. Did you have any comments you wanted to make first, or I had a short question for you?
Oh, I got a bunch of comments.
Sure.
Do you want to go first, or should I?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like the one thing, like the thing that was left over for me from the previous session was trying to understand what I mean, it sounds like the way the design guidelines were written, there was sort of it appeared that the design was being encouraged away from facing a second-story addition being over the side facing the street, that there was the idea that that would loom over the street. And so it was pushed towards using the side facing neighbors. I guess I sort of didn't understand whether there was an additional substantive cost to an alternate design. I mean, obviously the redesign work itself, but whether structurally it was feasible to do an alternate design to achieve similar square footage.
So the floor plan that was created was derived from the layout below. It's functionally designed to fit very properly in terms of cost and everything. So to move everything over, it changes the complete floor plan and intent of the client. And yes, it will be definitely a much larger cost than to have it the way it's built, the way it's designed right now. Any other questions?
No, I guess, yeah, I mean, it's like if you're sort of resting all of the new structure on the existing structural walls.
Yeah, it just makes sense logically to bring it all down.
All right, you had other responses or comments?
Yes, I do. I have actually several. So let me start with the first one is I have no intentions of deceiving anybody with the drawings. Let me put that out there, very clear and very factual. And it is my mistake for not having that wall at the correct length. And I'm coming completely clean. The way I got those lines was from Google Maps, and I took the map diagram and I drew it. So if you Google Maps, the shape of their house is what it shows over there. It's a bit of a massing model, so it was never really intentionally supposed to be like an exact layout of their house. However, after realizing that is completely off, given the packet that you guys sent us, I took the liberty to revise the shade diagram to show the actual layout of the house on top of the shade study. And it was actually really helpful, so thank you, the person who did that. But it also reveals a couple interesting items, is that because the way that the house is closer to the line, they're not actually getting less sun. If anything, we're covering less of their backyard. So it's not, so because the way it is, we're actually covering less. The way I drew it before, pushing it back, it would make sense to show that we're covering more of their backyard. But because it's actually closer to the property, I mean, we're actually covering less. And that's one point I really want to make very clear. And if the presenter would allow me to share my screen, I can actually show you exactly what I'm talking about, so we're all on the same page, if that's okay.
Brian, let me promote you to the panel so you can share your screen.
Yes, thank you.
Hold on a moment.
Thank you very much.
I just pulled up the Google Maps and I see what you mean. The actual polygon mode is wrong.
You should be able to share now, Brian. Brian, I believe you're muted.
Hello? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Shoot. Quite a bit. Okay, so here's the sun diagram. Here's the updated. And one thing I really wanted to point out is that, yes, I know that there's certain sun diagrams that show 3 times of the year, or 3 times of the day for a specific day, showing the way the shadow is. The way the sun diagram is basically illustrating is the worst case scenario, so that you know, like, what's the worst that could happen. And obviously it's winter, and it's covering here, but during the summer, it has almost no impact on this house. And during the equinox, the part where it does impact is right here. So the difference is, this part actually I didn't draw, so now it juts out. So it's actually, I'm covering less of the back. And then I looked at some of the letter and the pictures of their backyard. It's just like a kind of a side yard. The greenery, their backyard is basically right here. And to be honest, it's actually all the way over here. The porch is right here. And so in essence, we're not really covering that much of the backyard. And yes, the morning you'll get shade, as everybody else gets shade. It's at a lower point. So that's why I always tend to measure the worst case scenario at the highest point, and it's just clearer in that sense. So that's my comment for the sun shade diagram. I think that it's actually better now that's updated. It shows it has less impact. And the other thing I wanted to mention was the deck. So originally we didn't have a deck for this project. However, the deck was placed in there so that we can break up that facade, because one of the comments was that our facade might be too large. And one way to break it up was to place a deck cutting across it, and that made sense. And so we, went forward and did that. It has no intention of peering over into somebody's yard. It is trying to actually break up those things to make it less large and looming. And then the other thing was basically the design intent of this is to make it less looming over anything, and placing it over there makes a lot of sense in the back because it's kind of tucked away. In terms of sun impact, you can see it from the sun diagram. You're going to get some shade, but it's not like we're covering the entire backyard full of shade, throughout the entire year for 12 hours a day. So just want to make that clear. And then the last thing I wanted to mention. Well, so this is actually a comment from the owner. And so he really wanted to make sure that everybody knows this. After the comments from our last meeting, he met with general contractor he would be providing a 16-foot high nylon fabric and dust screen between the two houses to make sure that very minimal, if not any dust would get into our neighbor's house. In terms of parking, because that was a large issue for the previous meeting too, he'll make sure, the contractor will make sure that he arranged the trucks to be parking on the driveway and not to take up more parking spaces on the street. And then, but he's willing to help out in any way to make it smoother for everybody. But yeah, that's all I really have. I think that covers my comments.
Thank you. Yeah. I think the concern that Commissioner Madden raised is simply that I am, eyeballing this and knowing, having looked at plenty of shadow patterns, like the 3 to 6 p.m. window, sort of the late afternoon on that winter is going to be, it's more or less the entire roof.
It's the other way. So they're going to actually get more sun as the time. They're going to get more sun as the time,
right.
As it gets later. So
yeah, the morning rather. Sorry.
Yeah, it's just the morning. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. But yeah, it's like I have a 2-story house next to me, and that's all right. Are there any other questions from commissioners for the architect, or shall we move on to public comment?
Through the chair.
Commissioner Biasotti.
Would the architect care to explain the staircase in the garage?
Yes, of course. Yes, I was prepared for that. Yeah, that was a bit of a tricky design. I think you guys can still see my screen. So the staircase does loom over, or it does step over the garage. And the height is going to be 7'10". So it does clear, it does work. Is it a bit tricky? Yes, it was very tricky to design it to make it all fit together and get 2 parking spaces from that garage. As you can tell, that some of the steering and some design to the facade, as well as the difference in lengths of stairs, was part of why it turned out the way it is in terms of the lengths. But yes, it does work. And mostly it works because of the way that the house is also designed. Once you get down to here, it's the parking structure, so it's naturally a few steps lower, and that's what's giving you that clearance from the crawl space to the garage slab on grade.
Do we have any other hands?
Through
Okay.
the chair.
I see. Sorry. Yes. I actually see Marco Durazo's hand up first.
Thank you. Mr. Wong, I just wanted to hear it really quick, and then I wanted to ask a question. I was just listening intently about the deck in the back. Can you play back again you or the applicant's decision making for attaching that deck again?
Yeah, absolutely. No, originally we didn't have that whole back was like kind of a siding. However, because one of the comments was brought up was that it was we don't want the wall to be too looming or too daunting. You can tell, I believe, from the first set of drawings to the second set. I believe that's when it changed. Or at some point we had, actually no, I think it was in the first set, but at some point we had a planning meeting where that might have been a concern. So we broke it up by adding a deck. So it basically delineates a very clear line between the second and first floors to make it less of a tall wall.
So just, thank you. So just withholding any comment on the deck, is there, and I'm not an architect, is there any other way for you to accomplish that without the deck?
Yes, is there another way? Yeah, I mean, we would put siding, horizontal siding at that part. Basically, to create some sort of line that goes across the first and second floor so that it has visually something that separates it. A deck does that really well, but if that is growing into like a very large concern for everybody, we can figure out a way to either make it smaller, remove it, or whatever we need to do.
Thank you.
Commissioner Leffen.
Yeah, I did have a question for the architect, and that is when I did go out to visit the site, although not super substantial, there does just seem to be at least a couple feet of height difference between the subject foundation and the Murphy Foundation, which does seem to be a little bit downhill from them. And I was just wondering if that was taken into consideration at the shadow study, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, you probably have to do some sort of survey to confirm. But I was just wondering if that had been looked at a bit more and incorporated in the shadow study.
Well, originally we were looking to take up the full allowable height for the second story. We chose not to and kept it a couple feet down. And after the next we took it down another feet. So we had no intention of, we only took the height up to what we thought we needed, but we didn't want to take up the whole thing. In terms of the foundation of the Murphys, I mean, they are at a downhill slope. So I think they probably noticed that difference greater because of the way their house is designed and the porch. Because their porch is kind of integrated into their house, so they're kind of like slab on grade. So immediately they're going to feel like a 16 to 20 inch difference between the house and the other house. But they're on a slab on grade versus a foundation and then a crawl space and then the finished floor. So in my mind, the slopes they may be a little bit lower, but it's nothing out of the ordinary.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson. I think we lost Mary Lou.
No, I'm here. I'm not able to hear you, but I'm here. Can you hear me?
There we go. Now I hear you.
Yeah, so okay. Thank you. This is a question for Mr. Wong, and I also had the opportunity to visit the actual 1261, the site, as well as the neighbor site, and had the chance to go inside and at a time where the sun was directly showing. It was, I think it was about 10:45 to about 11:30. So, Mr. Wong, I just wanted a couple of things. I think that in breaking up the wall, number one, adding a deck doesn't break up a wall from my perspective, but I mean, belly bands and other ways of material is what changes a wall, but adding a deck doesn't. There's an illusion possibly, and but in most cases, people don't see a deck. The wall on the outside is usually done in a different way. So I feel that large wall, if that's a concern, that doesn't resonate with me. And in looking at the sun situation, I think that's the biggest issue on the table, is the sun. You talk about it, I think you mentioned it's just in the morning. But it's just in the morning 365 days out of the year. And so I know there are rainy days, and I know that there are times that there isn't sun showing or out. However, it is every day. And the entire length of the house, of the Murphy's house, their living room, their sunroom, the kitchen area, the bedrooms on that side are all sun generates into those rooms. They're not small windows, and it is the sun that creates the environment. So I just think it's important to recognize that it's not just in the morning, but it's the entire house all day long. And so I, the Murphy's sunroom is an extension of their living space. It isn't just a deck that people go out there to barbecue. It is, you can actually see how it's designed, and it's an extension of their living. Now, whether that's relevant or not, it's an opinion. But I think that in these cases, it's really important to take all of that into consideration. And I appreciate the fact of being able to go out there, and there was a time before the pandemic that we were actually on site all the time, and we can actually make more cognizant decisions and have more opportunity for observations. And this really showed me the importance of that. And had I just read it on paper, seen it on a diagram, see the sun studies and all of those, it's not the same as being there and watching it. And I must say that if it was my home, I would absolutely want to protect that level of sun. So I'm hoping that there's going to be an opportunity for some creativity here. I did learn, this information that I received from the Murphys, I did learn that they're trying to reach out to you. They're making every effort to try to work things out with you. I know that no one was living there. However, they have not been reached out to, and I think that some of this can be mitigated with that opportunity of having that discussion with you. I'm only hearing this from one side, so be aware that I'm not making a judgment. I'm just stating a piece of information, and that there is opportunity to have a creative discussion. And I know that this is a tremendous investment in your time. I know that the horrendous dollars that it takes to get to this point. However, I think it's a lifelong decision, neighbors, and I'm always a believer of bringing it back to the drawing board and being able to have more discussion to come out with an outcome that really satisfies two parties. And two parties are going to be living next to each other for a very, very long time. So I'm certainly not going to make my decision or express my decision at this point, but I do want to convey that I do take into consideration the importance of that sunlight. And just in the morning is just not good enough for me.
Okay, I just want to clarify one thing. I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. I know, especially reading the letters, emotions are definitely high, and that could be clouding people's judgment on looking at diagrams. And diagrams are, subjective in their own way. However, if you look at very clearly, during the winter months, regardless if we did build the second story or not, they're going to be receiving the same amount of shade. It's the same. During the summer, they won't be getting some shade in the morning, but ultimately, it's going to be about the same. However, once we get to here, yes, this part right here, this section, this will be the worst case scenario for them during that time of year. But in terms of the impact, their backyard is over here. It's right here. And I understand that they have their whole living room, everything designed along the side of the wall. But there are overhangs over here already. And this is like an alleyway. Just something I want to make sure that we're all aware of. And if they can take use of this backyard even more, it's all the pictures. There's trees here and things. This is not utilized yet. So they're viewing their backyard for sun and usage is really right here. All of this is still their backyard that's usable.
Through the chair, I'm just now going by memory, that particular area that you're pointing, it's a little harder to see that versus using a pointer, but I do find that if I can remember that was a cemented patio off to the side by a fireplace. It was not even quite usable, if that's the area that you're indicating.
We have pictures, so
I might have it off balance, off skewed for where I think that might be.
I actually have the pictures from, they submitted it as part of their letter, and it's pretty clear. So let me share that to make sure we're all on the same page. Okay, can everybody see that? So this is the backyard. Let me zoom in a little bit more so that everybody can see. Let's see that. All right, so this is the spot I'm talking about right here. Let me see if I can zoom in a little more. So this is the spot right here is the back spot at the very back corner. And that doesn't really get affected that much. But part of that,
I'm sorry. I apologize.
And this is the other view too, if you can see it. So that's the back part. That's kind of like right next to their overhead awning. And then over here is the side of the house.
If you can leave it just where it's at, that grassy area is really what's considered their backyard. The other portion is gravel and the trees, but their entertaining area is right where that grass. It extends from their sunroom to the end of that grass area and a bit out into the gravel. But that is their primary backyard, where that greenery is on the ground.
Right, I understand that, and that's where when you look at the worst case scenario sun diagram, like that area isn't really that much impacted, even with the second story, is what I'm trying to say.
So if you look at that shadow that's taking place right now, because it's the fence that's creating that shadow.
Right.
How when you say
so 9
a.m.
right? So that's the thing. That's the thing with sun diagrams and the sun in general. It's constantly moving different heights throughout the day.
Okay.
It could be a pin on the floor and can cast an infinite shadow if the sun's like long, if it's low enough, right? And so that's why it's important to look at the worst case scenario, because you can make a case for any point in time of the day. And so it's best to choose the worst case and then just only analyze that, and so that there is like so everyone's looking at the same worst case scenario. But yes, if at 9 o'clock there won't be getting shade in that area, but are you going to be entertaining at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m.? I just want to be really sure we're on the same page.
You know, I can't speak to people's style of entertainment. I mean, it's really just a matter of enjoying the sun with coffee. You know, it doesn't mean you have to be.
Yeah. Right.
And so I really just want to be able to look at the full picture, and I appreciate you bringing all the components to light here.
Yeah, and I just want to bring everybody on the same page, just because this is, you know, third go, and things can get wonky at this point. So just facts. Yeah.
I see Commissioner Durazo's hand again.
You know what, through the chair, I think Commissioner Leaton's hand was up first, so I'm happy to defer.
Sure.
Thank you. I'd normally be happy to let you go first, but it does relate to the worst case scenario and the shadowing. And it's my understanding that the noontime is when the sun highest in the sky and casts the least amount of shadow. And it's going to be the morning hours where we're looking at the worst case scenario, where the sun is going to be behind the subject lot based on the travel of the sun. And it seems that we maybe are not connecting on this one.
Yeah. So worst case scenario for me is when I'm supposed to get the most sun, I'm not getting any sun. Not so much the shadow itself, because the whole point of the sun study is like, I need sun. So if this is the best time of the day and I'm not getting any sun, that is very bad. And that's why that is what I mean by worst case scenario.
I see. Yeah. My interpretation of worst case scenario was the longest shadow that was going to be cast over their property.
Yeah, but if it's casting over the roof, you know, no one's using that. Doesn't make, you know, it's like, it's usage is the most important thing.
Yes.
The worst case. Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to just, devil's advocate, yes and no, because even though the shadow may be cast over, I don't know if let's say one doesn't spend a lot of time outside, but let's say one spends a lot of time indoors. Perhaps the shadow that would be cast during the morning time would have a greater impact on somebody who wants to enjoy the light through their living room windows. Whereas, perhaps they wouldn't be sitting outdoors. So I think that we can't value a shadow over the house any less than a shadow over the yard, I guess is what I'm saying. And the longest shadow would be during the morning hours, which is not shown in the shadow study. And I do recognize the shadow study was optional, and you did step up and do that. So I don't want to discount that, but yeah.
My biggest thing is a usable area. So a value of a space is defined how well it's functioning and being used. If the house itself casts a shadow on the shadow that's being casted by another house, essentially it's the same thing. Unless they're having coffee on top of the roof, I don't see. It's like it's usable space. So what I'm trying to say is that the shadow cast on top of their roof is not usable space. The fact that my original drawing showed their house like with a large yard, that would be a worst case scenario than what it is now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I'll just observe that as someone in the solar industry, I kind of like sun on the roof.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry.
I would say this is we don't. I observed at the last meeting, and I will make the point again that I believe we should update our guidelines to respect that, but I don't think it's fair to expect a design that was submitted under the existing guidelines to observe a guideline that wasn't there. So that will be an issue for another time. Commissioner Durazo.
Yes, thank you. Lower my hand here now. Mr. Wong, quick question for you. So a couple things. So I appreciate the amount of time that you and the applicant have put into this. And the commission's also spent a lot of time on this, thinking about it, discussing it, because it's the third time it's in front of us. I wanted to pick up on something that Commissioner Johnson said that I don't think you responded to. So what has been your level of dialogue and interaction with the Murphys?
I haven't talked to them. To be fully honest, I didn't know they were trying to contact me either. My phone number is on the drawings. So, to be honest, nobody was in that house before when we started the design process. And by the time we knew they were there, I knew it there because I don't live there. I don't know that somebody has moved into the neighbor's house. Was when we had the first meeting, and by that time, everybody was fairly up in arms already, and it's gotten much further than that. So I apologize for not having the courage to walk over there and ask them, what to do, but we're fairly along in the process. And I think at this point, it's I feel like we've done everything properly. We've tried our best. I think it's just an unfortunate situation. If we were to have met the first day, then things might have changed, but the fact remains that it was an empty house, and I didn't even know that somebody moved in. The first time I heard about them is at the first commission review meeting, and by that time, again, it was fairly, Anyways, I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Lethen.
Hi, I know you're so tired of hearing from me, but I did actually find some verbiage specific to solar panels in the design guidelines on the city's website. I got real familiar with it today. And in section 3.12.2, it's a section talking about design with sensitivity to adjacent neighbors. And the second point on that said, avoid planting tall trees that would block sunlight from neighbors' windows, private outdoor space, or solar panels. So although it is regarding trees, it does take into account solar panels, and so I don't think that it's completely absent from.
Okay, I could ask staff to clarify. My understanding is that refers to already existing installations.
Yeah, in general, yes.
So our guidelines do not advise on shading the roof for hypothetical future panels. Our current standards, it only concerns existing installations. And as I said, I think we should change that, but my understanding of the current standards is that we do not have any kind of standard around hypothetical future solar installations.
I see. Thank you. Yeah.
Were there any other questions for the architect? Or shall we move on to public comment? Do not see. Yeah, we move on. And as we do that, again, I would just able to comment last time because of the noticing mix-up or has new comments that were not discussed last time, we would love to hear from you at this time.
Chair, we have 2 hands raised at the moment.
Great.
Patricia, I'm going to open up your microphone to speak. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, my name is Patricia Murphy, and I live at 1251 Claremont. I want to start off by saying that facts are important. The diagrams should not be subjective. They should be accurate. And I'm sorry, I disagree with most of what Mr. Wong has said to me. We're a family that simply wants to enjoy our new home in our neighborhood. We did not want to have to expend the resources we have to date, and we had no other choice. We've said multiple times that we did not, and we have no problem with the expansion of 1261, including a second story. But the project as proposed only benefits 1261, and it's to the detriment of the adjacent neighbors. Our neighbor Yolanda on the other side at 1241 said previously that this is a permanent, foreseeable, major negative impact on the immediate neighbor. And I want to know how that can be in the spirit of the San Bruno Housing Guideline. We're looking for a solution from San Bruno Planning Department and this commission that is equitable for each house in the immediate block of homes. These plans set forth will unreasonably restrict and interfere with the light and air in our property. Building a looming wall 4 feet 1 inch from our property line that casts shadows on our house for multiple hours of the day for the majority of the year is unreasonable in any standard, especially when there are other options for this project design. I do not concur with what Mr. Wong said about how his new revised proposal will cast less shadows. I don't think that's accurate. I do not think it's accurate that Mr. Wong said that he tucked this into the back corner. This is a looming wall over our home. It will not just impact a side yard with trees and plants. This will impact our entire property. Sunlight is a critical function to element of our enjoyment of the house, to a heat source, and the health of the occupants of our home. The majority of windows, the living room, the dining room, both bathrooms, my daughter's room, our bedroom is a light source for this house, from this side of the house. We understand that Zoom meetings and COVID restrictions have made in-person meetings and site visits challenging, but we will welcome anyone else that wants to come to our site, and we appreciate the commissioners that have come and conducted site visits today. Mr. Wong, I'd like to know, have you been to this property? Have you seen it? Because there is no alleyway in our backyard. We respectfully ask this commission to reject the architect's proposal due to its discrepancies that make it impossible to rely on the accuracy of these drawings. We also ask the commission to reject the daylight plane option chosen by this architect. The San Bruno Residential Design Guidelines regarding daylight planes state that the Planning Commission has the authority to reject the architect's chosen daylight plan size. Thank you for your consideration.
Steve, I'm going to open your mic. Go ahead.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm Stephen Leslie. I'm an architect, San Bruno. I was asked by the homeowners at 1251 to review the project and to see, about their concerns about the shadowing and how close it is to their property. Couple of comments I want to bring up at the design guidelines of the city clearly say that the design should be done in a manner sympathetic to nearby houses. A daylight plane would certainly, if it were implemented here, would certainly mitigate this. I don't know if you saw it, but I submitted a couple of solutions that I feel would certainly work and look much better. I do have an argument with the architect that he said the cost would be significantly higher because if he were to move that wall over, I do this business all the time, it would be a small percentage of the money they're going to be spending on this addition and remodel. A very small percentage. I do designs like this all the time. I couldn't disagree with the architect more that this is the worst case scenario that he did at noon. That's the best case scenario that he did. I don't know if he's trying to be deceiving, but definitely it was done in his interest and not the interest of the neighbor. Worst case scenario would be what most architects do is it was brought up by one of the planning commissioners in that you would do a sun study at 9 a.m., noon, and 3 p.m. He did not do one at 9 a.m. And there's no way that after reviewing this that the sun shadow is better than before. I also noticed that when he was asked by Planning Commission if he considered the floor levels differences between the two, he said a lot of words, but he never answered the question. I'm sure he did not take the sun study into consideration with the floor level changes. I feel that a redesign with a daylight plane and moving the wall over is reasonable. This site is not unusual. There's no reason why conditional use would be prohibited from doing a design that moves it over. It certainly would help out. I just figure there is a better solution. I just want to say that even though it's a hassle to redesign it now, whatever he does now, the neighbors have to live with for the next 30, 40, 50 years. So a few months that he might have to do, or a few weeks of redesigning this thing is certainly going to help out in the years to come when this is permanently built. Thank you very much.
Next commenter, please.
Joanne, I'm going to open the speaker.
Thank you. It was encouraging to hear the comments about the shade study, but I still feel that initial picture that's, that the architect submitted, that he agrees now doesn't show the property in the way it actually is, as large it is, and as far as it comes over toward the other house. That shade study is still wrong. I mean, it says that it's supposed to be, it can be 44 feet. 44 feet it's a 50-foot lot, right? It would be clearly across the whole, most of that lot. So I just don't accept that that's valid. I think it's much worse than that. But then there have been all these problems that we've seen along in terms of getting correct information. It's been very difficult to get correct information. Last time Mr. Wong told us he'd been working on this for a year, but the house was only purchased at May 27th. So he also said they have the same elevation. Today he's saying, well, actually it's a little different. So it's just been very disturbing. And if the amount of time I have left, could I give it back to Trish Murphy if she wants to say anything else? and I'm done.
If people are ceding time to other speakers, we want to like accumulate. I don't know. What is our policy on that, Mr. Zaffarano?
Yeah. Sorry, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. So generally, there is not an opportunity for individuals to add time to other speakers. Everybody gets 3 minutes, and they're welcome to take all of those 3 minutes if they'd like.
All right. Thank you. Can we have our next commenter?
Hi, Yolanda. I'm going to open your speaker.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Yolanda Yang. I live at 1241 Claremont, 2 houses away from the proposed project. I've lived in this neighborhood for about 16 years, and I did write a letter to the Planning Commission, which was submitted in the package that the Murphy household at 1251 Claremont submitted. I am reiterating my primary concern from last month because I do have several new points. My primary concern is with the proposed second-story addition is that it will significantly and permanently block the sunlight and sunshine as has been discussed tonight. I'm not just talking about sunlight at noon as was shown in the drawings. The architect said that the diagram showed the worst-case scenario, and I vehemently disagree with the architect's definition of worst-case scenario. Living right next door to the Murphys and having lived here for about 16 years, I can state with absolute certainty that the shadows at noon do not represent the worst-case scenario. Having sunlight and sunshine significantly blocked does cause a significant negative impact to 1251 Claremont with regard to their overall quality of life. It will decrease their property value, and it may even increase risks of serious health issues such as depression in the winter with seasonal affective disorder, for which there is a well-known association. It has already been pointed out that there is an actionable solution that could mitigate the issue, which is to turn the proposed second-story addition by 90 degrees so that it doesn't run along the entire length of the backyard. As has been raised earlier tonight, there have been inaccuracies in what was stated by the architect. Last month, the architect said that they had been working on the project for a year, as one of our neighbors has already mentioned. And yes, the house in question was sold in late May, so it couldn't have been a project in the making for a year. The commission chair last month said that if the concerns had been raised earlier, that the commission maybe would have been able to ask the project to turn that proposed second story by 90 degrees, but that it was too late in the process to ask it now. I feel that some of these inaccuracies and the reevaluation of the time frame of events is a reason to reconsider. I also think that it's really important, as has been raised, about that violation of the required setback from the fence. I know that the house has been grandfathered in terms of the setback violation, but I really think that that needs to be grounds for being especially careful to avoid the foreseeable significant negative impact to the neighbor. And as you know, as we have been discussing, all of these things really, I think, are in violation of the spirit of the San Bruno housing guidelines. So thank you very much for your consideration.
I think I see 2 more hands left.
Yes, John, I'm going to open up your mic.
Okay, thank you. And Mark, I'm glad you're here. I want to state for the record that we were told at the last meeting that we could give our minutes to somebody else to speak. I believe Mr. Murphy was told that, and now we're being told we can't. That's a problem with the process, and frankly, there's several problems with the process that the planning department has imposed on the Planning Commission. I'd like to talk to you about it sometime, but not now. For the record, I did not get a postcard notice. I wondered if it was something I said at the last meeting. When I prepared, I looked for the minutes. I couldn't find any. Now I learn you have minutes. They're public records, and they should be available. there's been discussion of the patio. The patio was a structural part of the original design of those two houses that are the Murphys and the one next to them. I looked at those houses in 1979 when we bought our house here. But the whole thing about the process here, it's been like peeling an onion. Each time you find something, you find something else if you take a layer of the onion off. And what we found is error after error. I have trouble assigning credibility to the current shade study. It was presented at the last minute, as has other things that have not been in the board packets or the packets for the Planning Commission. And that's something that's happened from the very beginning. Staff work needs to be improved. I think the Planning Commission's entitled to better staff work. Things like this should have been resolved at the very beginning, and you shouldn't be wasting your time on this. I also want to go into a comment that was made by one of the commissioners about the homes built after the fire and explosion and about their size. There's no home down there that's anywhere near the size of this one after the addition. Two people down there have managed to build 5-bedroom homes on a much smaller total square footage footprint. And if they can do it, you can do it. But the bottom line is the fire explosion was a tragic event and forced the people to rebuild. They didn't want to build a new house. They wanted to live in the one they had. But unfortunately, it was taken from them. Finally, there's been a lot of talk about whether these are guidelines or they're not guidelines. At one time, you send something back and you say redesign it in accordance with the guidelines. Other times you say, well, they're only guidelines and we can't really follow them. I think the city needs to make a decision about how serious they are about their guidelines. I visited the Murphy's house. I knew the owner of the previous owner of the other house. I've worked with him 30 years ago. So I'm familiar with that one. I would encourage this planning department to visit the homes that are affected by this. And I applaud the Planning Commission for doing so. Thank you.
Mike? Betty, can you hear us?
Yes. Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm Betty Coons. I live at 1230 Claremont Drive, and I have lived here since 1974. So that gives me quite a while that I've been here. And I've known several residents who've lived in that house, and I have never had them feel that they needed more room. I'm concerned with, this is a young couple with one child, and they need all that room for one child? My goodness. We had 3 children in our house. And so I just think it's a little unfair for them to feel like, oh, we have to have a bigger house. And since they've bought this in May, they don't keep up the yard. It's a mess. And they don't have it mowed or anything, which when I was living here, when I first moved in, we got a notice from the city that we needed to mow our lawn. I was home with 3 young children and a husband that traveled. So I'm kind of concerned about that. And I do agree with everyone. The architect seems to be changing everything from time to time. Did he come to this project first and look at the project and take pictures then? Or did he wait till he had a good deal going? I'm sorry. It just is unfair to the Murphys. They just bought their house. They haven't lived there very long. I knew the lady who lived there before, sweet lady. And I loved going to her house because you could sit inside and still see the sun outside. The way they're going, there won't be any sun. So I think you really need to get your act together at the Planning Commission. Maybe it does mean we need to make some changes because there's lots of things going on. But don't make them fight this battle on their own. This is not fair to them. You can have the rest of my minute.
We have a few more hands, Chair. I'm going to open ACK. I'm opening your mic.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes. My name is Agnes. My husband and I have lived here for over 20 years in the San Bruno, Crestmore 2 area. And we walk around the neighborhood just about 3 times a day walking our dogs. And we can't help but notice that a lot of these homes have less than 5-foot setback in many of the homes around here in the neighborhood. And so with disregard for the sun shading of even what the Murphys have is and between their house and the next door's house, 4-foot setback. And so I'm just wondering, well, with those many challenges, there will be many challenges if my next door neighbor were to want to build another level on their house and want to block my sun. And with, many homes that are less than 3-foot setbacks, then you're going to have, and someone else are those all going to be approved then with disregard to the shading guideline? I just, wondering if it's a, and if the Murphys, say for example, someone wants to put a second level next to their house and they want to put in solar panels, how are they going to accomplish, getting solar energy when the sun is being blocked? That's just not right. I just want the Planning Commission to take into consideration that, setbacks are very important. And if next door neighbor wants to build a second story and block my sun, then, it's very, very devastating to their property value, to their quality of life. And, I don't think that's fair at all. So, and I think guidelines should be set as of this point forward, not, after this point. So this model raised a very big concern looming over a lot of the neighbors with less than 5 feet setback. And that's my point. Thank you.
I think a few of the hands that are up right now are people that have already spoken. Do we have any other commenters that have not spoken?
I see 2, Chair. Tyson, I'm going to open your mic.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Couple reactions to someone's comments earlier.
Could we pause the timer for a sec? Mr. Murphy, I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you. I don't know if you need to lean into your mic a little more.
Is this better?
Oh, yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay. The shading is less impactful because the houses are closer together. That is quite a statement. And we do not have slab on grade. We have crawl space. So, and then he also said that we get the same amount of shadow in the winter with their house now as the first story as we would if with their house as a second story. No, we don't have an alleyway. Also, he said he found out about us in November after his first set of plans was rejected due to major inconsistencies with the design guidelines. He could have reached out to us then to ask us our opinion on things. Also, let's see here. A lot of my comments were already made. Regarding, is there any way you could bring page 50 of the packet up on the screen? Regarding the elevations of the foundations, in that photo, you can clearly see the slope. So I think what's relevant is a little higher. Not that it is higher, is that is not factored into the shadow study. And the reason that's important is because higher elevation casts longer shadows than something that's the same elevation. Regarding the property owner, Mr. Lee, he stated on the November 4th call that he was willing to meet with his neighbors, discuss their concerns. He said, we're definitely open to speak to any of our neighbors and seeing how we can work to not intrude in your space in terms of visual design. I texted Mr. Lee about having this conversation with the concerned neighbors, no response. I even texted him that we and at least one other neighbor were willing to pitch in to help him defray the costs of the redesign, no response. He never one time approached any single neighbor to collect feedback on his project and has never been open to any discussions whatsoever. We tried, no reciprocation. Had he engaged from the beginning, we probably wouldn't be in this position now. As you know, we took the architectural plans to another architect, and you've heard some of those. In the beginning, it was discussed the distance from the property line to our sidewall on his plans was 14.6. It's actually 10.2. I think that makes a difference in the shadow study. Additionally, sheet A3.4 shows, the plate line, that outer wall that would face our property at 7'6", and Mr. Wong does not provide measurements for the floor to frame height of the second-story windows. I don't think they're going to be very high. His comment was, quote, we put those as high as possible. If anything from the inside, we'll be looking into the clouds. We won't be looking in the backyard of anybody's house. I don't think that's true. Those windows don't look very high, and they look directly back down upon our backyard. There was lots of comments about the deck that I agree with, too large and too intrusive where it would be located. Regarding the shadow study, one, the shadows by the second-story deck are unaccounted for. So are the longer shadows from the higher foundation. They're unaccounted for. His inputs for distance between the two houses are inaccurate. His orientation is off by 10 degrees. That's in the packet. The rear to front side yard lot direction is shown at 48 degrees east of north on his study. For Google Earth, it is approximately 58 degrees east of north. And, number 5, the shadow study, as has been said, only accounts for solar moon. That is when the sun is highest and the impact is the least. So, it does not show the impactful morning hours. We need to see something like that if you're. And then I had a question for the staff. If you guys could please outline your process and criteria used to evaluate a project. Are you simply taking the architect's plans at face value? Is there a process of verification for the information contained in the architectural plans? And if so, could you elaborate on that? That is, how much time do I have left?
Well, I think you're technically over it in view of there was a desire by some others to see it. We are letting that slide. Is that are you ready for responses or?
Yeah, in a minute. Actually, there's another member of our family who would like to say something. Just a minute.
Okay. As a different person, we can reset.
Hi. Some of you have probably met me, but to those who don't, I'm Stella Grace Murphy. I would like to say these things in me and my dog's defense. On weekend days, my dog loves to bathe in the sun, and she sticks her little tongue out. Now that's my opinion for my dog. Here's mine. The construction closer to my room than any other room. I have to go to school at a certain time, and in the mornings, I don't want to hear bang, bang, bang. I want to hear the cute little birds cheeping, and I'm done. Thank you.
That is the extent of our comments. Thank you. I appreciate answers to some of my questions to Mr. Wong and the department staff. I'm happy to repeat those if you need me, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well. Thank you for your time.
Do we have, I definitely see one more hand up from our attendees.
Yes, Carolyn, I'm going to bring you in the room.
Thank you. Good evening. I am Carolyn. I live on Fairmont Drive, 2 doors down from the proposed project. And I do also agree that it appears to be an unreasonably overshadowing of the house next door. I'm also concerned about the very large deck, not only looking into the home on 1181 Fairmont Drive, but the potential to look into quite a few backyards that are all very close together in that area. I don't know if all of you realize that the homes along that entire area are all single-story homes. And, you know, the proposed property is quite large. It looks like a giant hotel going up on the corner. It doesn't match. But I really feel for the Murphys, and I think I would be devastated if that gigantic building was going up next door. So I just wanted to voice my concern and my hope that this can be redesigned in a way that is a lot more aesthetically pleasing and matching to the neighborhood. Thank you.
I don't see any more hands up, Chair.
I do see Mr. Wong's hand up, but I'm not sure it's appropriate to engage in a back and forth. I don't know if Mark has an opinion on that. I think we've had our conversation with the applicant at this point, and we should be moving, closing the public hearing and moving on to our final discussion.
I would say that if Mr. Wong has anything else to say at this time, he should be allowed to say it. But
as a public commenter, I suppose.
No, he's the applicant's architect, and so he's the applicant.
Okay.
So I would provide him with an opportunity to respond, but
okay.
Other than that, I would close it off at that point, so you don't get into the back and forth that I think.
Okay. Well, shall we close the public hearing and then go back for any review with Mr. Wong then?
No, I would allow him to speak during the public hearing portion of the testimony.
All right. Then we can, Mr. Wong.
Can everybody hear me? Oh, good. Okay.
Yes.
This is actually a non-comment for me. It's actually from the owner. So I just want to say this is from Kevin. And just to clarify, one of the things that was incorrect was that he didn't try to communicate with the neighbors. He actually did. He sent everyone a letter with his information. And when that was done, the only thing that he got returned was a petition against his house. And that was it. So I just want to, and that's factual. There's like the letter. So I just want to, and the last thing I want to put in is like, we need to like stick to the facts. Just stick to the facts. Okay, that's it. That's all I got.
All right. I don't see any hands of anyone that has not spoken at this time. Shall we have a motion to close the public session, and then we can bring it back between staff and the commission?
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Chair Harmon.
Aye.
Vice Chair Madden.
Aye.
Commissioner Biasotti.
Aye.
Commissioner DeRozzo.
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson.
Aye.
Commissioner Leffen.
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye.
All right. bringing it back, there was a question around, I mean, it's sort of been brought up a couple times, once from the commission and once from a commenter. I guess I am a little concerned about the question of sort of like where the responsibility lies for ensuring that some of these measurements are accurate. And again, I mean, part of that is that some of this stuff is optional, that some of this stuff was not sort of required to be done at all. And so perhaps there wasn't the same attention to validating those measurements as if it was something that was, you know, like validate the mandatory things and not so much the optional things. But I guess like I am sort of curious to understand like how much can I as a commissioner rely on the documents put in front of me. You know, that's, I mean, looking at the new shadow study, like, you know, that, you know, the angles on it at least suggested, you know, sort of better afternoon sun than we might have expected. It's mostly impact in the morning, but then there, you know, are questions raised of how accurate that is. And I suppose we don't want a situation where the staff can be flooded with just, you know, infinite work for a relatively, you know, it's a residential project. It's the staff does not have the bandwidth to go out and take separate measurements, but I don't know what mechanism we have for ensuring that we get good information.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just very briefly address that. So I think the theoretical question of who's responsible for what is really less important than the question that's before you this evening, which is simply what evidence is there in the record that either supports findings that are in your staff report or does not support those findings. And you might reasonably determine that because of certain inaccuracies that the findings are not supported. On the other hand, you might decide that those inaccuracies are either not significant or were cured by the testimony and that therefore the findings are supported. So I think to focus it on that particular issue, I think would be the key for tonight's discussion.
Okay, thank you. Were there any further questions from commissioners? I do not see any. Yeah, I will just add that I think it's a difficult decision, and you know, I think we are imposing a cost on one resident, you know, the either way. Do we have an actual motion if people do not have further comments?
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
I do have comments. I don't have any questions, but as I was you know, thinking about this and really studying in on the design guidelines, because I'm kind of embarrassed to say I have really relied on staff in the past to both present the municipal code, so the definite requirements that are needed for these projects, and then I've not thoroughly read letter by letter the design guidelines. I've browsed them and I've let staff present them as they relate to each project. But this one really prompted me to sit down with the website and really look through and kind of tease out what I think these design guidelines mean to us and in the decision-making process. And, you know, as they're written, you know, it says, while the zoning ordinance establishes firm standards subject to variances under special conditions, the city's other adopted ordinances require more discretionary review. And I think that's why we're here, right? Because if every, you know, if every code was met by every project and there were no design guidelines, we wouldn't be here really to exercise our discretion, right? I mean, with the exception of, you know, exemptions and things. But what I'm kind of feeling recently is that these design guidelines are just as important as many codes. And And as I was going through them, I found really a lot that indicates to me that the project as designed doesn't conform to the letter or the spirit, as people said, of the design guidelines. And there are illustrations, literal drawings and examples in the design guidelines that show situations just like this, where there's a 2-story proposed next to a 1-story, and that there should be a side setback, a significant side setback, so that there is consideration given to the existing home. I mean, I wrote down all the different sections and codes, and I could go through them if it is useful to any of my fellow commissioners. But you guys are like, no. But I really feel like the use permit finding number 1, it doesn't conform to that. I think it would be detrimental to the comfort of the adjacent neighbors at 1251 Claremont and also to 1181 Fairmont, even though we haven't really heard from them, because of the significant impact on daylight, sky exposure, sun access, and privacy primarily for the Fairmont address. And same thing for, let's see here, the municipal code that was in one of the other findings. I think that it unreasonably restricts, again, the light will impair the value of the adjacent property. And I do feel like the height with the higher ceiling plates is not consistent with the other homes in the area, which are more of a low profile ranch or the occasional Eichler-esque home like the Murphy's home. I could kind of go on for a little while, but I personally don't feel like this is an appropriate design, and I actually really do like the idea that was proposed by the architect. I've forgotten his name at the moment. Is Mr. Leslie? Yeah. I felt like that was a really interesting line of consideration. He actually, instead of pivoting the addition 90 degrees, he considered an L-shape addition on the upper story with a significant setback that I think would mitigate a lot of the concerns with light and air and sun and sky. I have more, but I'll let other commissioners kind of chime in, and I'll pitch in if there's any more that I would like to say.
Commissioner Morgan?
Yeah, I agree totally with what Commissioner said, and I did like the design produced by Stephen Leslie, the architect. I think it answers a lot of the problems with setbacks, and the building, by what he has here, it looks much more balanced. I think the design as it is it's so close to the Murphy residence that the 2-story straight wall there would overshadow that property completely, and it would be overpowering. I certainly wouldn't like it, and I think it would devalue their home. So I don't like it. I'm not in favor of this design. Thank you.
Do we have any other commissioners wanting to add anything at this time?
Through the chair.
Yes, Mary Lou, Commissioner Johnson.
Well, I do support my commissioners' points of view. Quite intelligent, looking at all the thinking that went behind it. And looking at the neighbor's house on Fairmont, it didn't appear from a point of intrusion. It's on the side, and it didn't appear that was as big of an issue as it is on the Murphy side. The deck, I think, is an issue. I do. I don't know. Maybe I'm just on the optimistic side. I'd like to think that since the Murphys want to continue to have discussion, are open to having discussion, it looks like Mr. Wong may not be. However, it's certainly not to his advantage to not, to not be willing to be open to create good neighbor opportunities. I don't know. I'm wondering, maybe a little bit in the sky here, but could it be continued again? Let them go back to the table and have their discussion and say, this is the way, work it out, figure out a way. You got some information. Is there one last chance of opportunity here? And I know it's taxing on the staff and it's more time on us, but if there's a way to work it out, then that's the best case scenario, simply because of the longevity of them being neighbors. Who knows, 20, 30 years or whatever it may be. And if they can come back to the table with some solutions, because what we are going to implement is a yes or a no. And it's what it comes down to. And it's not a win-win. But if they can go back, have some discussion about it, it could be a win-win. Is that worth the investment to do that? So I just pose that thought out there for tossing it around to thinking about it. So that's where I am right now, trying to, I always try to figure out, is there a way, a possibility that it could be an opportunity for a better solution that comes through them, not us.
I just want to add that it's a lot less expensive to change the design on paper than it is in reality. So
that's right.
All right, I saw Commissioner Madden's hand up, but then did you bring it back down? Okay. Yeah, what I'm really struggling with is that sort of as a general principle, the man's home is his cat.
Rose.
Is my network acting up?
Hear us? You're on. We can't hear you, Harp.
There we go. Yeah, I think my note. I had to move room because the microwave interferes with my internet. And I think when I moved back, it destabilized. In any case, whatever decision we make tonight, I don't want to establish a principle that essentially, any neighbor can block any project for sort of, but this back to the architect and the owner to come up with something else. It's really important that they have certainty about being able to submit something that passes muster and not be caught in the cycle where it just gets deferred indefinitely. It's normal for R1 neighborhoods to have some two-story houses in them. That's pretty common throughout the town, throughout California. We see these second-story additions regularly, and they're generally not controversial. But I do, between the measurement issues and just, as I said the last month, and it really does seem clear that this is going to impair a significant portion of the productive hours for potential solar, which isn't, it's not in our code, but, people's enjoyment of the morning sun through their windows and potential productivity, it is at least a concern. And so I really hope that over the next, the coming year or two, we can figure out a way to make these guidelines more objective and clearer. But it's for me at least, a fairly difficult decision around the degree to which there should be discretion over this sort of thing that I think we really would like designers to have more certainty rather than it being a matter of people's taste. That said, I am getting the impression that there is not a majority to approve these permits, having heard from the commissioners. And so I think the question is, assuming that is the case, which it certainly looks like, how do we ensure that when this project comes back, that it comes back in a form that we can approve? And I don't know if staff or Mr. Zaffarano has any thoughts around that. Oh, I see a hand from Commissioner Haddon.
Yeah, well, one way is to vote no. No, I know that's going to start the process over for this architect and the homeowner. And I don't know if there's a way that the staff could waive, if there's any kind of reapplication fee that they have to go through or something. But to me, it's very obvious that when you go out to the site, this is the Murphy's side yard, which is really their backyard. Most homes that we look at, they're surrounded by houses on both sides, and their backyard is in the rear. Their backyard is on the side where this house is going to loom over, where this deck is going to loom over. There are plenty of houses in that neighborhood that have setbacks on their second stories on both sides, on two sides, an L shape, like Mr. Leslie's design. As most of you know, I'm an engineer. I've designed lots of houses. Yes, there will be a cost increase to have to set those walls back from the walls below, not to stack them. But guess what? That's what everyone has to do in almost every other city to do what they want to do to their houses. So to me, I'm all for letting this architect and homeowner redesign their house to conform with something that is in line with the standards, the guidelines. I disagree with staff's interpretation of the daylight plane. There are very simple things that could be done here to help this out with minor costs. And if that means I have to vote no on this to do it, I'm prepared to vote no on it. If there's a way to continue this, great. I don't know if that's going to prolong this even more, or maybe just saying no at this point in time is a way to set the message that, there needs to be a major redesign on this job. Not, one thing needs to be corrected. And then just as a person who works with architects all the time, revisions are part of the job. Yeah, the homeowner has to pay the architect to revise it, but guess what? That's the job. If I had a nickel for every time I had to redo my stuff because an architect or an owner changed their mind, I'd be a very rich person, but I'm not. So redesign is the name of the job. And if that is what needs to happen here, in my opinion, and that's all I've got.
Commissioner Biasotti.
Yeah, through the chair. There's a phrase that comes up in my mind in listening to this, and it's in the design guidelines and elsewhere, to minimize impacts. And I don't think this design has done anything to try to accomplish minimizing impacts. The design that the alternate architect proposed demonstrates that there is a potential to minimize impacts. So that said, and the reluctance for this architect to bring us a alternative, I think we should just motion to deny it. So I would like to motion to deny this application.
I'm going to actually second your motion.
Comment on the question?
Oh, sorry, I missed your hand was up, Commissioner Johnson.
I just want to pose one other thought out there. Couple things. The applicant can appeal to the city council, and it could be approved. And the other thought is, would the applicant be willing to come back with a redesign? And I'm wondering if we brought him back on, would he be open to that? He might just say, you know what, I'm willing to come back with a redesign simply because denial could be worse. On the other hand, it's, he could appeal it to the city council, and we have in past times denied projects as City Council had approved. So just wanted to put that out there.
Well, I think at this time we have a motion on the floor. I don't know if Mr. Zaffarano has an opinion on whether we should simply call a vote or, have further discussion.
So there is a motion and I believe a second. It's appropriate now to take any additional discussion from planning commissioners. I see there's at least one other hand up. And then based on that discussion, the person who made the motion could request that the question be called to vote on the motion, or somebody could make a substitute motion, for example, and that would take precedence over the original motion. And perhaps there is an opportunity to check with the architect to determine whether he would be willing to voluntarily redesign the project before any of those motions are actually voted on. But that's up to you, the commission.
Well, I see a hand from Commissioner Leffen.
I do have one question, and I also, Little Miss Design Guidelines have a little blurb that relates to our choice of what we can do. I guess my question is, if we were to deny, what would that mean for the applicant compared to if we ask them to come back with an alternate design? What, in practice, what's the difference there? Because we're kind of essentially doing the same thing, right?
I guess the difference would be if you deny it, the applicant would have the ability to appeal, as Commissioner Johnson mentioned. If it's denied, then the applicant can make a brand new application, and go through the ARC process and the Planning Commission process once again.
But so if it is denied and they come back with a new design, there would be additional fees?
Correct.
And also, just to add on to that answer, Commissioner Leffen, so the Planning Commission can't require the applicant to redesign their project. They could approve it, they could continue it, you can deny it, which is why it's usually a good practice, if you're thinking that there might be an ability to redesign the project, to ask the applicant whether they're willing to do that or not and continue the matter for a later date. If the applicant indicates that they're not willing to redesign, then I think the choices are a little bit clearer.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Kelly, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Given what City Attorney Zaffarano just said, I'll withdraw my motion. We'll ask the applicant if he would be willing to make changes, and if not, then I'll come back again.
Mr. Long?
Hi, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, yeah. A little bit disappointing, but I understand where you guys are coming from. And speaking for Donor right now, basically, we really did try to do our best to follow the planning design guidelines and worked with them throughout the whole process to make sure that we were on the right track. And apparently, once we got to the stage, it's being derailed for various reasons. However, we are in the spirit of making things work with our neighbors. There's no intention of trying to block somebody's backyard or anything like that. There never was. This is just like a bit of an unfortunate situation given all the circumstances of COVID and, moving in like halfway through the design and all that stuff. So to cut it short, we are willing to make changes and work to get to the next commission meeting to review this. It is our, we do not want, however, to have to start the process over, because that just doesn't, it's so long and it doesn't make sense, and they want to move in. So definitely we would like to continue if that's possible.
Right. So if we do a motion to continue to the next meeting, we can come back with a redesign at that time, or would this should this mark be reviewed by architectural review if it's a significantly new architecture, or can we bring it straight back to planning?
I think best to let staff address that.
Okay, thank you.
I believe you can bring it back to yourselves, but I would just recommend that you not, if you are, leaning towards having the applicant come back with redesign, that you not set a date specific for that. We'll do a brand notice for that meeting. 1 month is not typically enough time for us to get the information, get it reviewed by other departments, prepare the staff report, do the noticing, and then get it to you with a staff report before the meeting. So it is possible, but we would like to do the full renoticing of the neighborhood, and also make the plans available to the neighbors once they're submitted as well. So there's a few things we'd like to do. So just suffice to say, if that's the direction, just to make your motion so that it's not to a future planning commission state specific.
I see a hand from Commissioner Madden again.
Yeah, question for Mr. Wong. Mr. Wong, will you commit to fully complying with the daylight plane provisions in the residential design guide along the property between the Murphys and this house? Will you agree to eliminate the deck completely in the rear? And will you commit to keep the rear roof as a hip as it is now, even if you're raising it up a story?
Yeah, no, I believe for the deck we complied earlier. For the deck, it's not something that we hold dear. It was originally to make things better. If it's making it worse, then yes, absolutely. In terms of the daylighting plan, let us talk to our neighbor and figure that out. I need to see what restrictions, how that affects the floor plan, because the way that's all generated right now, this change will completely redesign the floor plan and the function and how people live, and the way it's used, and everything, the architectural intent, usually like months and months of, and just this, and I just want to make that very clear. So I won't be able to commit to that right away without talking to the neighbor and seeing what is doable. And then I assume that if we have the neighbor's blessing, you would be fine with that, right?
Mr. Wong, we don't want to do this anymore. So I'm sure you want to get this going too. To me, you need to satisfy that requirement, or I'm going to make a motion to deny your application. If I don't have that commitment, I'm going to make a motion. I apologize. I'm not trying to be ultra tough on you here, but this is the heart of this issue. And if you can comply with that, remove the deck and keep the rear of the house a hip roof to further minimize the sun impacts, you will have my support in a future ARC meeting or a planning commission meeting. If you did not, you did not have my support, along with totally accurate drawings. So unless I hear a commitment to the daylight plane tonight, I will make a motion to deny.
Oh, wait, sorry, can you repeat that?
I'm sorry to interject so that we don't have a back and forth between the commission and the applicant. I think right now there's no motion on the table because it was withdrawn. I think the issue was asking that the applicant either commit to a redesign or not. I understand Commissioner Madden is trying to press the architect for specific aspects of that redesign. That is certainly appropriate for Commissioner Madden, your decision tonight about how to vote on whatever motion might be on the table, either that you make or somebody else makes. But I think we have an answer from the architect about redesign, and if you have any other questions, then certainly welcome to ask them. But the architect may or may not be in a position to answer them. You'll need to vote accordingly on whatever motion is on the table.
Understood. So last time, will you comply with the daylight plane that is in the code along this property line between you and the Murphys? Yes or no?
Give me 1 second. I'm talking to the owner right now via text. Okay, so this is an ultimatum.
And I fully understand the implications of what I'm asking you to do. It's a major reason.
That's completely okay. Like you said, my job is an architect, and what I do is draw. And green drawing is part of the process. I'm okay with that. I just want to make sure it's clear that it's if I don't do this, I basically don't get the motion. And if I do it, I get the motion. And according to
I'm sorry. I need to stop this back and forth exchange.
Sorry,
it
the client
really
says
is
yes.
It's not appropriate. Yes. So yeah, I apologize. So it's really not fair to put the applicant in a position of having to answer these detailed questions about the diagrams and the drawings on the spot at the meeting. I think the question is,
we've been doing that
will there be a motion to continue and you can vote yes or no on that? Or will somebody make a motion to approve or deny? Vote yes or no on that.
Yeah.
I'm hearing that you agree.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. I will not do a motion to deny your request then if you agree.
Yes. I have confirmation on my side.
I think just as a matter of clarity, my understanding, we had the conversation at the previous meeting around the issue of the daylight plane only applying on a limited number of sides. And I believe Commissioner Madden's point, and that I agree with him in principle, that we should require a consistent daylight plane on all sides. But I think that is the intent here. Yes, Commissioner Madden?
Correct.
Yeah. So, and I think, yeah, that seems reasonable.
Chair, we have a statement from our attorney, and I think that we need to take that into consideration.
Oh, I was just making sure that we understood what was what. Anyway, yeah.
You're allowed to ask questions and get answers. We've been doing it all night. So, I'm asking him if he's willing to comply with the daylight plane, and he now says yes.
Yeah, that's fine. So is the appropriate motion then, if we are going to expect a redesign, that we would move to continue until such time as the new design is available? That's basically...
That's right. It would be to continue to a date uncertain, so that way staff can receive the application, the new information, decide how best to process it, and then schedule a meeting that's consistent with their review of the application.
Okay.
I'd like to make the motion that the applicant have the opportunity to redesign and resubmit for an ARC review prior to coming back to full planning commission, and that his application be continued as such.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second.
Chair Harmon?
Aye.
Vice Chair Madden?
Aye.
Commissioner Biasotti?
Aye.
Commissioner DeRozzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Leffen?
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan?
Aye.
7-0, motion passes.
All right. Moving on. Find my agenda again.
I think I have to recuse myself at this point.
Right. And we can remove Commissioner Morgan from the panel. 642 Pepper Drive. Do we have a staff report? This was also a continued.
Good evening, everyone. Hold on just a second. Can you all see this okay?
Yes.
Hello, everyone. I apologize. I have a little bit of a cold, so pardon me. I'm a little slow tonight or anything. we do have a continuance for 642 Pepper Drive, a use permit and an architectural review permit. So this project was continued from the last regular Planning Commission meeting on February 15th, and more information concerning drainage from the new interior roof line was requested for this project. Just a brief reminder, the scope of this project. This was a total increase of 1,460 square feet to bring the home to a total size of 2,500 square feet with 3 bedrooms and 3.5 bathrooms, with an expanded kitchen and dining room upstairs and a new entertainment room downstairs. So this was continued, and there was requested for additional information on drainage. So after the continuance, the applicant resubmitted updated plans and elevations with all downspouts labeled. The applicant described that there would be an installation of a cricket in the interior of the joined roofs, raised in the middle with a 2% slope in each direction. And water will be drained either to an undercurved drain or to the home's own landscaped area. I did speak with the chief building official about these plans, and she confirmed that the plans would meet the San Bruno building code, and drainage would be reviewed further for compliance in the building permit phase of the project. This revised site plan does show the locations of existing and new drains in relation to the cricket being installed in the interior of the joined roofs. And this image highlights the existing and newly proposed downspouts circled in red. This elevation from the plan sets shows the roof cricket in the interior with a 2% slope and highlights new downspouts on one side of the home. The plans also include the notation at the bottom concerning stormwater drainage. And that concludes the presentation for 642 Pepper Drive.
Thank you very much. I see a hand already from Commissioner Madden.
Yeah, Brandon, can you bring the roof plan back on, please?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. So the cricket in the middle is going to basically capture about 30% to 40% of the water on this roof. You've got the ridges, the 2 ridges on the hipped roofs. Those middle portions will slope down onto the cricket, and then the crickets will go left to right. It's not clear to me still, what happens to the water as it gets to the end of the cricket? Does it simply spill over, or is there a gutter?
The applicant says that there will be new gutters installed around the perimeter of the roof line, which will capture the water and then drain them into the highlighted downspouts.
Okay, so they will capture the water and take them southward to those crickets that are on the other side of the hip. Or sorry, the downspouts that are on the other side of the hip. The 2 circles in the middle, correct?
Yes, and I believe the elevations also, when I spoke to the applicant, he said there would be gutters around the entire perimeter of the roof, from the cricket and on each side of the roof as well.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure there's no waterfall coming off those crickets, and because there's water and noise associated with that. So thank you.
I think you can see the rim of the gutter on the roof line here, so that it would come from the cricket into the gutter and then out the downspouts.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping. It wasn't labeled, so I'm just making sure.
Yes, I think the applicant might be here as well to if you had any additional questions. Yeah, Eugene is here as well.
Can we
My only question is that accurate? So if it is, then I'm good.
Can we promote the applicant so that if they wish to speak, they can?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you.
Hello, Eugene, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. That was correct on what Brandon said regarding Commissioner Manning's question. The cricket will be draining into the gutter into a new downspout.
Okay, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions from the commission or staff or the applicant? Doesn't look like it. Do we have any public comment on this topic? At this time, if you would like to comment, your 3-minute comment, please raise your hand. I am not seeing any hands.
There are no hands, Chair.
All right. Do we need a motion to close public comment? All right. Does anybody have such a motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Chair Harmon?
Aye.
Vice Chair Madden?
Aye.
Commissioner Biasotti?
Aye.
Commissioner Durazo?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Aye.
Commissioner Lethen?
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan?
Oh, Commissioner Morgan is recused.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. 6-0, motion passes.
Thank you. It sounds like we do not have a lot of comment on this one. Do we have a motion at this time?
My only comment is I still think this roof line is a terrible eyesore, and I would really hate to be the neighbor looking out my window down at this. If that doesn't disturb any of the other commissioners, I'll follow along. But
I agree totally. I don't know if that's going to make me vote no, but it's not good.
It is certainly unusual. Do we have a motion in either direction from any member of the commission? I will just observe, I mean, like I don't know. I don't know how much people spend looking at their neighbors' houses. I mean, I have a 2-story house to one side and a 1-story house to the other, and I go out in my backyard to play with my cats or whatever, but I don't really actually look that much at the neighbor's house.
Well, we, through the chair, continue the drainage situation, and that's what we are, and they've complied with.
The drainage, and that's a substantive concern in terms of sort of public health and safety and so on, and yeah, that seems to have been addressed well.
So, my personal opinion, it doesn't really matter. The fact is that they've met what we have asked them to continue to do, and they've met that. So, given that situation, I move that we approve this project. I'm sorry, I don't have I have to pull the agenda way back up. I'm way down. I move that we approve this project as presented. I can't pull up quickly the numbers.
I believe the text is staff recommends that the Planning Commission approve use permit UP 21013 and architectural review permit AR 21015 based on findings 1 to 6 and conditions of approval 1 to 23.
I'm happy to second Commissioner Johnson's motion.
Thanks for helping us.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Chair Harmon,
Aye.
Vice Chair Madden,
Yay.
Commissioner Biasotti,
Aye.
Commissioner DeRosso,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Lethen,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan is recused. 6-0, motion passes.
Thank you, Madeline. All right, come back to my agenda. Oh, that's my minutes. Oop. Okay.
I'm bringing Commissioner Morgan back in.
Great. Okay, so we have item 7C, 119 Acacia Avenue, and nobody was recused on this one, and we have a staff report on 7C.
Hello again. This project is for 119 Acacia Avenue, a use permit 21014. This is a request for a use permit to allow the construction of a new 249 square foot addition which exceeds the lot coverage restrictions. And to be completely transparent, I was not the primary reviewer of this project, so please bear with me. The location of this project is on Acacia Avenue, just south of San Felipe in Huntington Park, and on a 750 square foot lot. The current existing conditions at the site are a single family home of 1,806 square feet of gross floor area with 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. In 2021, there was an ADU added of 366 square feet, and according to record, there was an addition made to this home of 391 square feet in 1999. The project proposes a major interior remodel with a total gross increase of 249 square feet. This would bring the total size of the home up to 2,055 square feet with an FAR 0.5. I do apologize. In the I saw in the chart that was put into the staff report, it did say 0.55, but the FAR is 0.5. It would be an open concept, have an open concept kitchen and family room area with a relocated bedroom and laundry area, which would again bring the house to 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. This project does require a use permit because it proposes to exceed allowable lot coverage. Using the formula in the municipal code with the adjusted lot, the allowable lot coverage would be 1,814 square feet. Currently, the home itself has an existing lot coverage of 1,900 square feet, slightly over, and it proposes a lot coverage of 2,025 square feet. If the commissioners recall from our discussions on ADUs last year, that the ADU per state law cannot be factored into any of the development standards. This is a site plan of showing the in different shadings what exists and what is being proposed. There is an ADU in the upper left portion of the site, and the addition will be in the lower left portion with an unenclosed porch underneath it. This shows the street level floor plan of what is proposed, where it shows the relocated 3rd bedroom with a 226 square foot addition in the lower left of the home, and then also 23 square feet of addition at the near the dining room. The lower level would have an unenclosed porch adjacent to the existing ADU, as well as new landscaped area in the rear. And these additions show how the home would look, particularly that bottom left elevation shows that addition of the third bedroom in line with the rest of the house, the street level of the house, and that unenclosed porch that is being proposed beneath it. And that concludes the presentation for 119 Acacia.
All right, I see a hand from Commissioner Madden.
Brandon, is there a view of the front of the house, a photograph that shows the property to the left?
There's a view of just the house in this presentation, but there are neighboring house photographs in the staff report.
I'm just wondering about the three large windows in the new second-story addition over the archways. Is there any privacy concerns looking into the neighbor's yard?
Let me pull up. Actually, that's probably the easiest thing. Let's just go to good old Google Maps, and I'll screen share that.
And then the other thing is there's that strange kind of angle in the bedroom on the upstairs. Is that because they're trying to keep the square footage below a certain number, or it seems very odd?
Most likely. That would probably be a better question for the architect, I believe is here as well.
Okay, so thanks for bringing up the photo. Looks like they'll be staring at each other, but no real, it's kind of a push, if you ask me, on the privacy issue. So, okay.
Madeline, I believe the architect James is here, if you would like to bring him into the room.
Great, I'll bring him into the room now. James, can you hear us? I believe you're muted.
Still seeing him muted. Oh.
Okay, how's that?
Much better.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, thanks for the question. First of all, with regard to the low triangular area between the existing residence and the new bedroom, no, that was not intended to try and keep the floor area below 250 square feet. We had that there from the very beginning. That's intended to preserve the light and air coming into the existing master bedroom and keep privacy between the two bedrooms. So we don't have windows directly facing each other, and the existing master bedroom window maintains its light and air. So we just took advantage of that and placed a small dresser area underneath that window sill. And the second question, I believe, was with regard to the windows overlooking the on the laundry window and the new bedroom windows. That there's an existing deck on the house right now, which comes even closer to the property line than it is now, and the residents currently use that quite extensively for barbecuing and so forth. And they've had a conversation with the neighbor regarding this, and I don't believe there's any feeling there's any conflict or concern with that. This will actually be set back a little bit further than the existing deck that exists.
Okay, thank you. Good to know.
Do we have any other questions for staff or the architect from the commission? I do not see any hands. Do we have any public commenters on this project?
There are no hands raised, Chair.
All right. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
I move that we close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Chair Harmon,
Aye.
Vice Chair Madden,
Aye.
Commissioner Biasotti,
Aye.
Commissioner DeRosa,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Leffen,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye.
7-0, motion passes.
All right. Seems like this one will be relatively uncontroversial. Do we have any further conversation? Or are we prepared to make a motion on this? I can read you the staff recommendation if everyone needs that. The staff recommendation was that we approve use permit UP 2104 based on findings 1 to 3 and conditions of approval 1 to 23.
Motion?
I'll second.
Wonderful. Roll call, please.
Chair Harmon,
Aye.
Vice Chair Madden,
Aye.
Commissioner Biasotti,
Aye.
Commissioner DeRosa,
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson,
Aye.
Commissioner Leffen,
Aye.
Commissioner Morgan.
Aye.
7-0, motion passes.
All right, that concludes our public hearings. Oh, yes, and I should remark, appeals. There's a 10-day appeal period if anybody wishes to appeal. There's my... do we have, our agenda has a conduct of business item between our public hearings and items from staff. Michael, could you clarify what that's about?
So this is part of our new software called PrimeGov, which generates agendas and templates. It's really for anything. It's not really clear even to me what.
All right. Well, I'm going to assume we don't need to actually do anything with that then. Do we have items from staff then?
Yeah, just the one item from staff, which is just looking for volunteers for the April 14th ARC meeting. And so we have Johnson, DeRosa, and
I think in the last one I can.
Morgan. Okay.
I can volunteer as a backup in case one of our.
So, yeah, but we're good.
With us anymore, it doesn't look like. My understanding at least is that is an action that has to ultimately come from the city council. Would that be your understanding, Michael?
Yeah, so just to let you know, we do have something in our work program for later this year to look at the residential design guidelines to more objectify them. And so that is something that is in the works, but it would be later in the year. But your comments are heard, and and staff agrees with your comments based on the way that this particular the Claremont project panned out. Right now we do have in our design guidelines the two options for how the daylight plane is applied, and that is for except for new homes, it is optional in how it's applied. But your point's well taken that it should be applied where it can be do the most good for separation between projects.
Great. Yeah, because I mean, like Commissioner Leff and I refreshed myself on the guidelines earlier today, and I knew them pretty well years ago when I've done houses, one or two in San Bruno, helping my sister with her house. But I think one thing I noticed right away is it's dated 2010, and a lot of things have changed, especially with regard to solar. So we should, I think, really tighten things up. So we avoid what happened this evening as best we can, and what happened in previous meetings where there's some ambiguity or the spirit of the guideline is loopholes in the spirit are being exploited by people. And he's advocating for his client. I understand that, but at the same time, I think we saw, at least since I've been here, this is the most blowback, pushback, whatever you want to call it, from the neighborhood, certainly. And I've never seen a no vote before that practically happened tonight. So I think just for the sake of everyone involved, architects, people modifying their houses, and the neighborhood, if we could tighten up the language, and I think it would go a long way to avoiding what happened tonight. So I'm glad to hear that it's under review.
Yeah, I to clarify, my point was that we as the commission, like it's not we do not have the right to direct staff to do anything in particular. It's the city council directs the city manager, and the city manager directs the staff. But certainly this is something that I would have been considering talking to the city council about, saying just in my role as a citizen, as well as the commissioner, saying like, hey, can we get this on the agenda? So if that is on the agenda and we're going to have that kind of study session, I definitely 100% approve of that.
And I see the Murphys may still be listening. I would encourage them to go to the city council as well, and maybe kind of just tell them what happened here, and that you would appreciate them accelerating this process or reviewing it.
Okay.
And through the chair, and this is something that I'm really not well versed in, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, that these kinds of conversations somehow, I think, need to be agendized, because typically we need to notify the public before we have these conversations. So I think officially maybe we need to send, I know it's cumbersome and it's ridiculous and I totally don't get it, and it's Brown Act stuff, which is confusing, but I think that if we want to continue talking about it, I think that we need to send a request to staff to agendize the conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Michael, I assume the Planning Commission would get a chance to review this, any revisions, like we do a lot of things that go before council. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you would be the first to review it.
Yeah, it would be a study session similar to what we've had in the past on the parking revisions, and then we would make our recommendations on it before it passed to council.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we should do whatever the proper procedure is to encourage that to happen, like Commissioner Leffen said.
Sure, certainly, absolutely.
All right, I think that really was more an item from members. I think we haven't actually closed our items from the public for items not on the agenda. I thought I saw Patricia Murphy's hand go up briefly, but maybe she decided she was satisfied.
Yes, there are no hands, Chair.
I see no hands this time, so we will close that section. Were there any other items from members or subcommittee reports? I don't think we have any particular subcommittees recently. It does not look like it. All right, then I will declare this meeting adjourned. The next regular meeting will be held on April 19th, 2022 at 7 p.m. I thank everyone for their time, patience from staff and the public, and have a good rest of your week.